Okay, can I be that guy to kick off the show today? Zach Phillips, star of Greta on Saturday. Can I be that guy to kick off the show? A little bit later today than usual. Wanted to make sure we got in the full Canada-Finland game before we went live, figuring everyone's going to be watching this thing anyway. Hey, Zach, I want to be that guy. Can you be with me while I'm that guy?
Yeah, let's hear it.
All right, Canada wins 5-3. Final is set, Canada versus U.S. We are going to rewind and talk about Saturday and what we saw, what we heard, and the fights and all of it. But I'm going to be that guy. Binnington's got to have that Esa Lindell shot. Every single game, there's one. If you're a Canadian fan, you're feeling good about going up 4-0. You're not feeling so good about the end. Glandon with a pair. He was excellent, but that Esa Lindell shot. Again, every single game, there's been one. And the game Saturday was Gensel. I'll give him Larkin because that's pretty close to a perfect shot on Saturday. But that Esa Lindell shot, Binnington's got to have. He's got to have that.
Yeah, I agreed with Laz a little bit more than you on the Larkin one. I do understand where you're coming from, but I thought it was a little bit further further out there. So it was like...
shot. It's a perfect shot.
I guess though more
Laz.
so what I thought about that
Perfect
one
shot.
is where I agree with Laz is like the big save, the big moment save.
Yeah.
You come up with one there, and he referred to the one where McDavid came down on Hellebuck, and you're looking at that one, and it's like Hellebuck makes that save. You didn't get it at the other end. I don't know, Jeff. I'm getting I'm watching the puck cross the blue line right now. I got some clenching going
confidence.
on. There's sweat. It's nerve-wracking.
He just looks jittery. I know, listen, we're going to talk to Pierre McGuire in a couple of moments here. He was at the game. We're going to talk to Carter Hutton about goaltending. DFO Live goes live from Boston at 5 o'clock Eastern. So we'll get there in a couple of moments too. But Canada looking really good through 2 periods of play. Canada looking good for like 3/4 of the game. And then the Esa Lindell goal happens. And then Granlund with a pair. Granlund's excellent, by the way. Like flat out, excellent hockey player, full stop, good on the Dallas Stars. And all of a sudden, first of all, Crosby with the collision at center ice, intentional or not, and then has the presence of mind to fire that one in the empty net, diffusing all the tension at TD Garden. For all the Canadian fans in this was like, because you saw it, right? Oh, we're going to OT. Oh, it's going to be one more. It's going to be off a shin pad. It's going to be heel of a stick. It's going to be toe of a stick. It's going to be off a skate. It's going to be something. Because I'm with you. Everyone's a little bit jittery about Jordan Binnington. And they have good reason to be jittery about Jordan Binnington so far this tournament. But congratulations, I suppose, to Team Canada. They make it through to the final against the United States.
Don't say it like that.
Well, I mean, how else are you going to say to look great? Like, out of the jaws of victory, they almost snatched defeat. Like, here we go. It was looking great early. McDavid's looking awesome. What a shot. McKinnon with a pair. Point and McDavid look fantastic together. And you're thinking, okay, you know what? They're just going to park this thing for a couple of periods. And it's going to be A-okay. And it's going to be cruise control for the rest of the game. And I don't know if I mentioned this already, but the Esa Lindell goal. The Esa Lindell goal is one that just sort of cue the comeback. And then, listen, you're a Toronto Maple Leafs fan. You've seen that before. You've seen that story before, Zach Phillips.
I don't know what you're talking about. I've never seen 4-1 late in the third period at TD Garden. That's never come across my radar.
No, that's never happened again. So anyway, USA will now play a by way of standings meaningless game against the Swedes later on this evening. One of those games where, and Jake Ottinger gets a start for USA in that one. One of those games where you just hope that if you're the Americans, everybody stays safe and healthy, and you don't develop bad habits. You don't take your foot off the gas, but at the same time, I don't think you go all out for fear of injury, because now it is all eyes on Thursday. All right, coming up on the show, Daily Outlines presented by our friends at FanDuel, North America's #1 sportsbook app provider, and this is a simple one. We're going to talk plenty about Canada, Finland. You just saw it. I just saw it. We all just saw it. And we're going to talk about it here in a couple of moments, a little more thoroughly, with Pierre McGuire, who's at TD Garden. He's on his way to do his own podcast right now, and he's pausing a little bit to make time for us. And for that, we thank Pierre McGuire. Also, Carter Hutton, I mentioned, will join us a little bit later on. We'll talk about goaltending with Carter Hutton, namely Jordan Binnington of the Canadiens. I don't know if I mentioned this, but there's one goal in every game for Team Canada that leaves you scratching your head. This all leads up to Thursday night. It is Canada facing off against the United States. A rematch of Saturday, which was a really wild game in some regards. And in another, perhaps more accurate description, kind of turned into a pedestrian defensive battle. For comments on what you just saw and what we've already seen, we head to our good friend Pierre McGuire, who's en route to doing his own podcast, and he's pausing to make time for us now. Pierre, thanks so much for stopping by, as always. How are you, sir?
I'm excellent, Jeff. It's really nice to speak with you. I'm at a friend of mine's establishment in Boston called West End Johnny's. Johnny Caron also has Fenway Johnny's, which is obviously by Fenway Park.
Yeah.
So a little promotion for Johnny Caron, who's allowing me to use. This is called the President's Room in his establishment. There's actually a rug from the White House that's underneath the Resolute desk that's in this room right now. So a really cool spot right next to TD Bank North.
I love it. That's fantastic. Well, thank him for the hospitality and letting you use the facilities so you could talk to us about what you just saw. Now, this was a tale of two games. This was a story of Canada in control and then Canada at the end hanging on. And once again, we come away, and I'm focusing just on the Esa Lindell goal that gave the Finns a tiny little glimmer of hope. Granlund scores a pair, and all of a sudden the knees are knocking together all across, all across Canada from coast to coast to coast. How did you see this one? And, I keep harping on Binnington here, but again, there's the one goal, the Lindell goal. Like we've seen it before. There was the Gensel goal on Saturday. There's one goal in every game that leads you to believe that the speculated Achilles for Canada is turning out to be the actual Achilles here. Your thoughts on what you just saw?
So I'm going to agree with you on everything you said about the weak goal, 1 week goal per game. But here's what I will stand up for Jordan Binnington. I'd be really interested to hear what Carter Hutton has to say. The Finns like to establish their offense, chip, chase, and check. They tried to chip, they tried to check, they tried to chase. The problem was Jordan Binnington was really good handling the puck in the first period. It broke the Finns down. They couldn't manufacture their offensive cycle game. They couldn't manufacture their forecheck game. His puck handling was really elite in the first period. So while late in the game, he gave up the weak goal to Esa Lindell. I completely agree. I thought there were portions in this game where his puck handling made it a much easier game for a Canadian defense that doesn't have a Cale Makar that's 100%, doesn't have Alex Pietrangelo, doesn't have Shea Theodore. So it's a way different kind of a deal that they're dealing with. I thought they handled it really well. I think Jordan was a big part of that, the puck handling skills. Now, Canada was better, subtle little line changes. You see Reinhardt going on the line with Crosby and McKinnon, and that line really worked well. You see Stone moving away from Crosby and McKinnon and going with McDavid and with Point, and that line was outstanding for Canada. So I saw a lot of subtle things that were really good for Canada. I love the fact Travis Sanheim jumped in the rush and got an assist in the first period for Canada. That'll give him a lot of confidence. Canada was pretty good in this game. I don't think they were super elite. I thought they were pretty good. And again, the underrated part of the game for them, I think, Jeff, was how well Jordan Binnington handled the puck, especially in the first period.
That makes then specific dump-ins much more important because this is one of those things that John Cooper was talking about before the game, justifying the decision not to go to Aiden Hill, but to stick with Jordan Binnington. He did talk about the puck handling and how much easier it is as a defender when you have a goaltender that can handle the puck. Well, the interesting thing, and we saw this on Saturday, USA kept the puck away from Binnington. Right, they really, really did, and that's going to be of prime importance come Thursday in this final matchup. You mentioned some of the line changes here, and it seemed as if right away. Well, first of all, were you surprised that it took Cooper that long to get to his top two lines? Like we didn't see those top two lines like a good 2.5 minutes into the game, and you're like, why are you hiding McDavid and McKinnon and Crosby here? What are you doing, John Cooper?
I think one of the things that happens when you have such an elite coaching staff, and whether it's Rick Tocchet, whether it's Pete DeBoer, whether it's Bruce Cassidy, whether it's John Cooper, you got a lot of brain power on that bench. Sometimes paralysis through overanalysis, and it wouldn't surprise me if maybe there was a tinge of overanalysis, which led to some paralysis, and then finally the manager of the group just says, "No, I'm going to do it my way," and I think that's where we got to, and so I give him a lot of credit, John. The one thing, and I know you know this, Jeff, but this is for our viewers and our listeners out there. John Cooper's an excellent manager of people. He's an excellent manager of getting things organized. He's not the most brilliant tactician. He's not the guy that you're going to be able to get to go in your room and give Vince Lombardi, rah, rah, rah. That's not his thing. But he's a really good manager, and I think he showed his managerial capabilities today.
Yeah. Well, why do you think this worked? Like this, the combination of the top six specifically, like right away, it looked like McDavid and Point were just right there, like two speedsters, and they could think and measure each other's brains. And Mark Stone is just one of the smartest players in the game. And then Crosby with McKinnon. I mean, that's kind of an obvious one. You throw Reinhardt on the right side. Why do you think that these two lines clicked? What made these two work?
I think Point's just such a smart player, and his speed is so dominating, and his ability to control the puck on the boards is an underrated part of his game. So I think that's why I think it really worked well with McDavid. In terms of Crosby and McKinnon, that's pretty apparent. But I love the fact that Reinhardt's there. If you watch the Sydney assist off the cycle game down low, you see where Reinhardt's so valuable. You see Crosby's peripheral vision and strength on the puck. And then you see McKinnon's ability to get it in traffic and release it quick. The catch and release was awesome. So it's little things that lead to big things. The one thing I thought today compared to the first two games, Mark Stone was skating a lot better. Mm-hmm. And I think part of that is because Braden Point and Connor McDavid made him have to keep up. Where I think with the Crosby and with McKinnon, he wasn't skating as well. I think he skated a lot better today.
Let me rewind to Braden Point here. He's one of my favorite players to talk about. And one of the I'm not going to say who the team was, but there's a team out there in the NHL that didn't draft Braden Point. I know the Western scouts were banging the table for him. They didn't draft him. I think I might have told you this story before. Maybe you already know it. That didn't draft him because he had a poor, wait for it, force plate result at the combine. Just let that sink in for 1 second. He is one of the most creative players in the NHL. And he's also a shooting threat. One of my favorite things to watch is when I'm watching Tampa Bay Lightning, and I always bite on it, that Kucherov fake from the boards when he peels a hard rim off and he fires at the Point who one times it in. Pierre, I bite every single time. Like it's the first time I've seen it. I mean, that's just part of the magician that Kucherov is. But he's creative, he's fast, he's not shy, and he's a shooting threat. Why do we not make more? I mean, I know we're living in another sort of golden age of offensively gifted players, but why don't we make more of a bigger deal about Braden Point? I don't get it.
Some of us do. I know you do. I think I tried to. I think part of it is that for a lot of years, Stamkos was there, Kucherov was there, Hedman's there.
Sure.
If you look at it, he's kind of buried, in the roster. It's kind of, I can tell you this, when I was in Pittsburgh, we had all those star players. Nobody made enough of how good a player Larry Murphy was.
True.
Nobody. We talked about Yager. We talked about Lemieux. We talked about Recchi. We talked about Stevens. We talked about Francis. We talked about Samuelson. Nobody talked about Larry Murphy. I think Braden Point is their version in Tampa of Larry Murphy. Huh. I know they play different positions, but they both are right-hand shots, and I think they've just been overwhelmed by having players with bigger reputations that have played ahead of them.
Let me go down a quick little side road here with you on Larry Murphy. I'm so glad. So I was on Morning Cup of Hockey this morning with filling in for Colby. So me and Johnny were talking, and I was just sort of, over the weekend, I'm getting back. We're all international hockey this, and so I'm picking up the odd book here and there that I have here at the library, and I reread this one over the weekend, and you go back to 1987, and that closing sequence, the goal, the Lemieux goal. Keenan pulls Messier out and puts in Howard Chuck for the draw. There's the hook that we only saw one repeat angle. The thing that I don't want to say it made the play, but it just shows you like how connected everybody was on the play. It's the Howard Chuck draw. It's the Wayne Gretzky through the neutral zone and the pass to Lemieux. But it's Larry Murphy going to the far point or the far post. Goes to the far point as like Pierre. It's the greatest decoy I think I've ever seen. No one at Cobb's Coliseum thinks that Murphy's going to get that pass. The puck's on Lemieux's stick. He's not passing. Murphy's going to tap it. if Lemieux passes, but everyone knows Lemieux's shooting, but the goaltender's got to respect it and freezes. And the goalie freezes because of Larry frickin' Murphy, who doesn't get any praise on that goal. It's all about Gretzky to Lemieux. But to me, it's Murphy freezing the goalie by going post. You have a couple more thoughts on Larry Murphy. He's another one that I love talking about.
One of the greatest privileges I ever had was to coach Larry and work with Larry. I'll never forget when we won the Cup in '91, sitting with Larry and his late father on the charter back from Minnesota. And then, putting he and Gordy Roberts together as a tandem. They were two old graybeards at the time. Yeah. And they were just so great to coach together. Larry was one of the most coachable players I've ever had the honor to work with. He was really addicted to wanting to handle the puck on the offensive blue line. He and Joey Mullen and I would go out before every practice early, maybe 30 minutes early, to just work on Joey's release and Larry handling pucks along the blue line. I can't say enough good things about Larry. Every time I see him, it's just an amazing treat. Special guy, great player, and obviously a Hall of Famer. And just, I can tell you, Jeff, it was a real privilege and honor to have the honor to work with him on a daily basis. It really was.
I believe it. And a wonderful guy to boot. Okay, let me rewind to Saturday and the start of the game specifically. Now, the one thing I'm gonna nitpick here, Pierre. I'm gonna get really Pacific, as we say in the Atlantic here, Pierre. I'm gonna really nitpick something. So Hagel and Matthew Tkachuk fight off the opening draw. Okay. Brady Tkachuk and Sam Bennett fight, and then JT Miller and Colton Parayko. What would have sent the message that this is for real, and we are only interested in the moment right now. There's no NHL, there's nothing else other than this tournament and this game, is if they switch partners in the first two fights. If it was Sam Bennett, if it's Sam Bennett and Matthew Tkachuk, two Florida Panthers going for it. Like, first of all, the way it started was, the energy is sky high. It's going through and everyone's calling people, you got to watch this game. It's crazy. It's wild. You saw the numbers for the game were fantastic. But was there a part of Pierre McGuire that said, this is good, but if I want to make it even better, I want Bennett and Matthew Tkachuk? Your thoughts on that idea?
Well, yeah, no, I would have been interested to watch that. Now, here's one thing I'm going to tell you, Jeff, that I talked about before the tournament started. I know Hockey Canada put together the very best roster they thought to help them win this tournament. Obviously, they're going to the final. They got a legitimate chance to win. Yeah. But when they put the team together, I said to myself, I think people are mischaracterizing this event. And I wanted to get your take on this when I knew I was coming on with you.
Okay.
Everybody's talked about this being a great international event, best on best, Finland, Sweden, Canada, U.S. Nobody's talked about this is an NHL tournament. Yep. Amongst NHL players. There's not one player playing in this event that's not worked in the NHL or is playing in the NHL.
Yep.
And so I said to myself, before the roster was even said, Tom Wilson needs to be on this team.
Yeah.
And for Canada. And the reason why Tom Wilson needs to be on this team is, as I learned from the great Brian Burke when I worked for him in Hartford, nuclear deterrents matter. If Tom Wilson's playing in that game on Saturday night, you think Matthew's ready to dance with Tommy Wilson? I don't think so. I think Brady is. I don't think Matthew is. And then potentially you get Bennett and Matthew, and you get Tommy and Brady. And no pun intended, not Tom Brady, but Tom Wilson and Brady Tkachuk. So if you follow me, Jeff, that's the only – and I'm not going to quibble because they've gone to the final. It's a brilliant management team, and it's a really smart coaching staff. But I was looking at the roster construction. I was saying to myself right from the start, this is why Tom Wilson needs to be here. This is an NHL tournament. It's not an international event. It's an NHL tournament.
NHL tournament, and that's why enjoy the fights while you saw them, folks, because a year from now, you are not going to see that at the Olympics whatsoever. You will not. Well, one of the there's a couple of interesting things to this one. Like the start of the game was like, okay, so here's how I described it on the morning show, Pierre. See what you do with this one. So I described this one as it started off like Hagler Hearns. And you remember Hagler, just some of the greatest boxing you've ever seen. Just two guys right from the opening bell, just going. Started off like Hagler Hearns, but finished up like Mayweather Pacquiao. Big anticipation, but by the end, the story was the defense. and the shutdown. And the story, at least to me, was Jacob Slavin and Brock Faber just snuffing everything out. The story was like the United States just suffocating Canada. I have never seen that many superstars as Canada dump in pucks while their feet weren't moving. They had no options to the blue line, and then they just dump pucks, and they sort of all look at each other and go, "Oh, you the F1 or am I the F1?" Like, what do we? Like, it was a remarkable defensive game by the United States. I know the Cooper's going to make all the adjustments the players will as well, but based on what you saw on Saturday, how would you characterize the game?
Exactly what you said, but there's one other element that I think is being missed by a lot of people. The Charlie McAvoy hits, and in particular the one on the boards,
Yes.
Connor McDavid after McDavid roasted him going to the net and scored on the backhand. Those hits send a message both to the American bench and to the Canadian forward saying, you know what, this guy's plugged in tonight and he's dangerous and he's unpredictable. Not sure I want to pay that price tonight. I'm just not sure it's worth it tonight. It may be down the road. You know, I know some people didn't like him when he played. I loved him because I coached him. Alfie Samuelsson was a nasty piece of business, Jeff. He was. But I can tell you right now, he got a lot of people's attention quick because he would do what McAvoy used to do. And he was a lefty playing on the right side. And he would whack people but good. And it sent a message early in games, you better not tread too lightly because if you do, this guy might take you out. And I think Charlie did that to the Canadian forwards on Saturday night. I really do.
I thought McAvoy was excellent. I mean, did he get danced by McDavid on the goal? Yeah, of course he did. I mean, he's not the only one to get posterized, as the kids say, by Connor McDavid. But I will say this: like that entire blue line, I thought was fantastic. I thought Connor Hellebuck was real good. Not that he had to be spectacular. It seemed like it was one shot and out, one shot and out, one shot off the glass. Like that was just the USA was not allowing anything to get to the net more than just one shot at a time. To me, one of the guys that really stood out was Dylan Larkin, and not just the goal. Now, first of all, that goal is a perfect shot. Like, I don't know who's stopping that one. That one is so fast and such a perfect spot, and he's doing it in stride. Like, it's so good. To me, Dylan Larkin stood out. Who were some of the other players in Saturday's game that really popped for you? To me, the entire U.S. blue line plus Dylan Larkin did it for me.
I'm so glad you brought up Jacob Slavin. He's such an undervalued player. For the longest time, I said, I know it's a trophy that a lot of people don't care about, but when you're the most gentlemanly player in the league and you're a matchup defenseman, that says a lot about your talent and your skill. And so I was always happy when Jacob's won it twice now. And he should have, the Lady Byng. But the other one is Brock Faber. I'm a huge Faber fan. Watched him play at the University of Minnesota, obviously. It was a big trade with LA to get him. And Billy Guerin and the guys in Minnesota knew exactly what they were getting when they got Brock Faber.
Oh, yeah.
Couldn't say enough good things about him. But Jake Gensel, this is the thing. Billy Guerin was part of that scouting staff in Pittsburgh when they stole Jake Gensel out of Nebraska, Omaha. And you can just see Jake, when he's put with the right players, he makes a difference. And I thought the American staff, you could see the fingerprints of Tortorella on that game plan. You could see the fingerprints of Sullivan on that game plan. You could see the fingerprints of Johnny Hines on that. And you could see the fingerprints of David Quinn. So I thought that American staff, they all played a role in that because all of them have worked together before. Whereas the Canadian staff, none of those guys have ever worked together. Now they're starting to get a better feel, and I think that's really positive for Canada.
Okay, so there's two players I want to key on there. Both are defensemen, both played with each other, and that's Jacob Slavin and Brock Faber. A couple of points. One of my favorite things to do, this is the little peek inside my pathetic head, Pierre. This is how boring my life is. When I watch Carolina Hurricanes games, one of my favorite things to do is watch players. We always hear, oh, this guy's got a good stick. Oh, good stick, good stick, good stick, good stick, right? I love watching players try to put the puck underneath Slavin's stick. You can't do it. It's one of the, I mean, you're a coach. You know, like, it's one of those things that, like, coaches just, like, dream. Like, no, you can't get a puck under there. You can try it. You can't get a puck under there. It's one of those, like, skills that players respect and coaches go like, oh, yeah, good luck. Try it again. It's not going to happen. The other thing, and this is always interesting to me. I do love the Calder Trophy. Calder Trophy is always one of the most interesting trophies, and we follow it all in the new kids and the rookies and all that. But one of the things that I I find is maybe more important than who's the best first year player is who's the best second year player. Like, I don't know if there can be a trophy for like your Calder +1 trophy. I don't know how you would even describe it. But Connor Bedard wins the Calder last year. He was fantastic. Brock Faber was very much in the conversation. As far as like who's the best second year player, Connor's had his struggles this year. Those have been well documented. I would go Brock Faber. And the second year is harder than the first year, Pierre. And you know this going away. Your thoughts on that one?
So I agree with you on Faber, but I'm going to give you another one. Adam Fantilli. I really think last year, if Fantilli doesn't get hurt, I think he's going to win the Calder Trophy last year. I really believe that. But he gets hurt, and obviously a pretty devastating lower body injury to his Achilles. If you watch Adam Fantilli play now, there's a whole lot of Mike Modano in there. There's a whole lot of Mike Modano there. Jeff, you were around the league. I mean, I was coaching. Try drawing up a game plan to shut down Mike Modano in his prime. Try to play against him. Not easy to do. And I think that's where Fantilli's trending right now. I really believe that.
The interesting thing to Fantilli, this is interesting. So my thought on Fantilli is this. I'm with you. Skills there, speed's there. You're right. Like when he skates, you think like, wow, we're looking at Modano here. My only thing about Adam Fantilli, in the spirit of I'm going to nitpick everything, is he does everything in a hurry. Everything is super fast. Like once, you've seen this before, Pierre, the guy that comes in and just like everything speed. To me, that's Fantilli. The greats know when to slow it down. And once Fantilli gets that into his game, then to me, look out. I mean, even Connor McDavid, who we all consider the fastest, even he plays with his speeds, allows gaps to close, and then takes off. And like once Fantilli gets that comfortable at the NHL level where he doesn't have to be in a rush to every single play, to every single puck, then I think we're going to see like, just how good this kid can be.
Great point. Very, very fair. I think one of the things that helped Mike, and you'd have to ask Mike this, but being around Neil Broughton, being around Dave Gagne, being around all those older guys that really understood how to control the tempo of a game. And then obviously going down to Dallas and who's around you, a guy named Joe Newendike, you learn too. And I don't think Fantilli has those guys around him right now where Mike actually got those guys around him and helped him a lot.
That's a great point. Great point. Okay, let's get back to Canada-US here. So actually, first of all, tonight the United States will face off against Sweden. Technically, I don't ever think that a game is meaningless in a tournament because you never want your team to get into bad habits. But you're Mike Sullivan. What are you telling your team before this one? Like Thursday's on the horizon. You're playing Canada. It's all set. You're Sullivan. What are you saying?
We are going to continue with our planning. And our planning is every day in a short tournament, we get better. So we're going to go up another notch. We're not giving up odd man rushes. We're going to control face-off plays. We're going to support our center iceman on face-offs. It's not one guy that wins face-offs. It's 5 guys that win face-offs. We're going to dominate off the rush. We're going to dominate off the cycle. We're not going to expose our defensemen deep in our own zone. So every day is about a growth day. And if I'm Mike Sullivan, I want to continue to grow my brand. And I think that's going to be an important dress rehearsal for them to be ready, obviously, for Thursday night.
Okay, let's get to Thursday night here because once we get past this evening, it's all eyes on Thursday, and it's the desired outcome. Something that I floated last week, and here we are. It's Canada-US. Like, this is what everybody wanted, right? Everybody, I shouldn't say everybody. The lion's share of people wanted Canada-US in the final. Once upon a time, I've maintained that the most important game in the Summit Series wasn't Game 8. Canadians tend to think that was the most important one. I think it was Game 1. Because that was the birth of international hockey, because now there were the Soviets. And they just beat Team Canada at the Montreal Forum. All of a sudden, whoa, everything changed. To me, that was the birth of international hockey. I was too young to remember it or even watch it. But to me, that was the birth of international hockey. And it became Canada versus the Soviet Union. The future and the present of international hockey is Canada versus the United States. Do you think it's time, in the spirit of how the women do the rivalry series, do you think it's time for, instead of what we now know as the Four Nations, which is never coming back, but do you think that there's a place in the schedule somewhere, somehow, for a consistent or semi-consistent or however consistent you can make it, 5-game series between Canada and the United States, the new Summit Series. This is what everybody wants. And the body count will be horrendous by the end of it, knowing how much these two teams don't get along. If we had to do it again, would we do 4 nations face-off or a best-of-5 Canada-US?
Well, I think this was a good initial departure point. I really do for this type of an event. I love your thought and your theory on the potential for a 5-game series between Canada and the United States. I think it'd be phenomenal for the sport, especially here, because it would help TV. TV needs a lot of help, as you know, right now. And I know everybody's very excited on what the initial numbers were for Saturday night, but look, we've had the NHL going since October, and the TV numbers have been an unmitigated disaster for the NHL, and they know it. And so this is a really good start to try to reel people in for the last quarter of the season going into the playoffs, which is great. I love your thought about a 5-game series. I think it'd be great. The one thing I want to say out of respect, Jeff, and I don't want to make this a political show.
Yep.
I got a lot of friends in Czechia. I respect them a lot as a hockey country. I got a lot of friends in Slovakia. I respect them very much as a hockey country. I got a ton of friends, starting with Igor Larionov in Russia. I respect them a ton as a hockey country. And I understand there are people that are upset with all this stuff going on, and I get it. But this is about hockey. This isn't about the politics stuff. I think Russia still has to find a place in anything you're going to call best on best, Jeff. I really believe that.
I go back to the original banning of Russia and Belarus, and a lot of it was just bluntly, a lot of the European countries would have pulled out of tournaments. They just didn't want anything. Like, listen, there are Russian hockey players playing in the NHL. That is very much a double eye. Again, I'm with you. I don't want to. This is not my field of expertise. I don't even want to dip my beak in the fountain, but a lot of that was the European countries would have no part of it, and that is a socio-geopolitical issue, obviously more than it is a hockey one. Okay, closing thought, and we'll let you get back to the pub. Looks like a great place, by the way. What do you expect on Thursday? Like, we're gonna get past tonight, but what do you expect? Like, are we gonna get 3 fights in 9 seconds? Are we like, what are we gonna? No. Am I gonna get Matt Tkachuk versus Sam Bennett finally? Are we like, what are we looking at here for Thursday?
I think discipline usually matters in any deciding game, so I think you're going to see a lot of discipline. I think both teams will probably read the riot act before they actually go on the ice, whether it's from the NHLPA or from the NHL or from the officials.
Why?
I think they'll be.
The thing is, why?
I think there's going to be physical violence. I don't think there'll be a ton of fighting. I don't. Because when you play a deciding game, how much fighting is there?
No,
how much fighting do you see in a Stanley Cup final? We don't see a lot of fighting, do we?
But here's the thing. Like, what's everybody talking about from Saturday? Like, what's the old Conn Smythe line? We have to stop all this fighting or we're going to have to make bigger buildings. Like, people are calling each other to say, you got to turn this on. This game is wild. And it became more of just a hockey. You saw these highlights went everywhere, and it's the rivalry and the intensity. And I don't know. Like, what am I just like? Oh, Marek, you got scabs on your knuckles. Did you walk over here? I get it. Like, do I sound like a barbarian if I suggest that in that case with 2 intense rivals, fights in the game are not the worst possible thing? As a matter of fact, it's quite the opposite.
No, I think you're onto something there. I just don't think we're going to see staged fights within the first 9 seconds of the game. I just don't think we're going to see that. Okay. Now, if you were to tell me that Canada had Adam Lowry and they had Tommy Wilson, let's just say they had those 2 guys, I think anything's in play. Yeah. But, that's not how the Canadian lineup's built. It really isn't. Like, no disrespect meant to Brandon Hagel. He's a tough kid and a really good grinding player. I'm not sure that's his thing.
That's not his thing.
And Sammy Bennett's as tough as they come, and you know it, and I know it, and guys that play against him know it too. But, I don't see that being. I could see a fight happening because somebody gets hit and somebody goes to defend him, but I don't see that first 9 seconds happening like that. We'll see. I just think it's going to be an electrifying moment for hockey.
I think so, too.
I think it's going to be phenomenal for the game.
And got a couple of days to build it up as well. Pierre, good luck with the podcast. Looks like you're a wonderful establishment. We'll touch base soon, my friend. Thanks so much for hopping on right after the game.
Anytime for you, Jeff. Thank you very much for having me. Take care. Enjoy the rest of the series.
You be well, and you as well. The great Pierre McGuire joining us here on the sheet just after Canada wins 5-3. So it is a Canadian-American final on Thursday. USA faces off against Sweden. At the top of the hour, DFO Live goes to preview that one, have a look back at the game today, and have a look forward to Thursday. Okay, and again, it's Canada, so the hot button issue is goaltending. And when we discuss goaltending, we default to our man Carter Hutton of Daily Faceoff, who joins me now on the sheet. Carter, first of all, how are you today? And how are you feeling about Jordan Binnington? I'm not going to bias the question by saying when you have a look at that Esa Lindell goal, when you have a look at the Gensel goal on set. I'm just going to ask you to surrender the floor here and say, if you're a Canadian hockey fan, how are you feeling about the goaltending in Canada?
Oh, I feel like we fall behind a little bit, Jeff. I think we're at a point where when we look at what we've seen so far from Connor Hellebuyck and what we see from Jordan Binnington, it's been, timely saves, I think, have been a difference maker, right? Giving up another couple late in the game here in a nothing game. It seems like the game's over. So I don't take a lot away from that, but what I do take away is the way he handles the puck and the way that he's made some key saves. And I thought today was the best he had looked, right? So if you eliminate those last goals, I've been in this situation. It sucks, right? You want to get out of the game with a shutout, or at that point, there's 6 minutes left. You've given up one. Let's just move on to the next game. Obviously, that stings a little bit, but if there's a guy with the mental capacity to manage this moment and be in a situation, and how, Jeff, you get it. How well does this suit? It's at TD Garden, where he won a Stanley Cup in Game 7 Thursday night. I'm confident. I like this situation. I don't hate it. I know we picked this roster apart and we go through. It should have been Scheifele. It should have been Tom Wilson. They haven't lost the tournament yet. They lost that big game. But if they win this tournament, are we going to look back on this and be like, what did it take to make that decision? The brass going with the guys that they thought. So I don't love where his game is at, but that's Jordan Binnington. His game has never been one of the elite, right? He's a guy that battles and he goes with it, and they're going with their gut, and I think that's the situation they're in. And if it's a one-game showdown, I think he has it between his ears enough to get it done.
All right. Park the goalie talk. There's been plenty of that, certainly. But actually, here's one. Let me close on one. I want to bounce a theory off of you that I have, and this is not based on numbers. This is based on strictly anecdotal evidence. So once upon a time, the goalie factory was in Quebec, and then it moved to Helsinki. No, then it moved to Stockholm. Then it moved to Helsinki. Now it seems to rest in Russia somewhere. And we wonder where the great Canadian goaltenders have all gone. My personal theory and solution is this. And again, this is strictly anecdotal. I see, as a hockey dad, more parents dissuade their kids from playing goal than ever before. They just don't want any. I mean, listen, I know there is a special place in heaven for goalie moms. Goalie moms feel it more than anybody. You know this, Carter, more than anybody in the rink. Goalie moms, oh, bless all of you. Special corner in heaven just for you. But there are so many parents that don't want their kids to play net. My solution to this in Canada, again, this will take a long time to work its way through the system, is you want to play goal? Perfect. Your registration is waived. Do you have a thought on where the goalies went and how Canada can solve the problem?
Yeah, I think that is a case of it too, right? You look at all these young youth that grew up watching Sidney Crosby and wanting to be a player and wanting to score that golden goal and be in that moment, right? And now you have a goalie standpoint where we've had a lot of good goalies for a lot of years. And I also think parents get deterred from it from the cost of the equipment, right? So I always think back to this line. I was actually at a watch party here with some friends. We were watching it, and one of the fathers said to me, like, my son's a good little player, and I discourage him from being in that because I don't want to buy the equipment, right? My argument to him was my dad's argument, which he always said was it was cheaper than a lawyer, right? So it kept me out of trouble. I was busy. I was doing stuff. I was making friends and growing and becoming, there's so many good things that come out of hockey too, right? And I think at times we lose that perspective, right? We start watching Team Canada, or we see our 8-year-old or 9-year-old do something gifted on a hockey arena, and we're like, whoa, he might have something here. Instead of being like, he's making friends, he's learning how to do things. And for me, goaltending was the gear. It was the equipment. It was being the guy and having that pressure. And I grew into it. And the other side of it is I know what you're dealing with. My parents dealt with it. I was in the NHL making millions of dollars and my mom could still not watch. Or if someone wrote a bad article about me, that person was tainted for life by them, right? And I would try to explain to her, like, this is part of the deal. I wear it on my chest. I know how to deal with it. So I think for parents, there is a lot of that. And again, you sit there at home, you think about all these young parents watching this game. Think about Jordan Binnington, the amount of abuse that he has taken. He is one of the best goalies in the world. And we are so quick to be critical of the goalie. Even a game like today where he was a difference maker early. He made a lot of good saves. His puck handling relieved a lot of pressure. He did a really great job. He gives up a couple late goals, and now we're like, this is just the cross you bear being a goalie. So it is hard for family. It is that. But I feel like if a kid loves it and he wants to do it, and something I deal with my son right now. He's a great little player at his age, and he wants to be a goalie too. But I just think we'll dabble in everything. And when the time comes, whatever he wants to do, it's going to be him. And I don't think we should define success by them making it in hockey.
No, there's what is it, 0.00001%. You were one of those, by the way, Carter. Congratulations, that actually make it to the to the NHL. You're one of the special ones, Carter Hutton. You're one of the special ones. Okay, you're a Canadian. Let's say you're a Canadian hockey fan. You're probably feeling pretty good about your team. Okay, a tough one. It's really a 1-goal game, empty netter. 1-goal game against the United States. One shot the other way makes it a different game. You're probably feeling really good about yourself when it's 4-0. And then late in the third happens. You're a Canadian hockey fan. How are you feeling about Team Canada heading into Thursday? Knowing full well, and how many times have you heard this as a pro athlete, never critique a win. A win's a win. Doesn't matter whether it's 6-0 or 5-3 in this case with an empty netter by Sidney Crosby. You're a Canadian hockey fan. How are you feeling about that one?
You know what? I think it's one of those ones that leaves you wanting a little bit more at the end, right? I guess you just start to worry and you see it break down. You talk about how good this USA team's going to be. And for me, it's like if they do win that game 4-0, we're still got to face USA, who was awesome. And they were in a state where it seemed like they was very hard to create against the United States, where I thought it was better. You could see the momentum and where it went late in that game. The good thing for me is Craig Simpson touched on this earlier in the thing, and I had kind of said it right before he said it, so I felt like I could be color commentary as well. To my wife, the abuse that McDavid and the abuse that McDavid and Crosby take, this isn't something new to them, right? This isn't like they just came out to this tournament and they're like dealing with this abuse of guys being all over them. They have dealt with this since they were 10 years old. Since they've played at any level of hockey, they've been the best player and they've learned how to deal with that. Now let's spread that across this whole team. They've been in games where they've won, they've been perfect start to finish, and they've had to get up the next night. They've been in games where they've been brutal and they have to get up the next night and play. So the short-term memory and they're able to compartmentalize things and just deal with their game and move forward is the most reassuring for me as an ex-pro, right? Because I've dealt with this and I've gone to games. Example I use a lot, Jeff, was I remember one time I was playing in Buffalo and we were playing in Montreal at the Bell Center, and I come out and we got whacked 6-2, which wasn't very uncommon in Buffalo those days. And I come out to meet some friends who were seeing me, and they were like treating me with white gloves. They were like, "Hey, what's up, man? Can you come have a drink? Can you come?" And I'm like, "Boys, like, get out of here, right? It's me. Like, I've already had my moment to I've had my moment to be upset. I've had my moment to deal with it. Yeah. The video doesn't lie. I move on. Let's go." And that's part about being a professional, right? I think Carey Price did a great job of when he spoke, talking about Jordan Binnington, like, hey, what are you doing? He's a pro. He's going to go out there and make the next save. And I think whatever happened at that end of the game, these guys have already moved on. They did their job today. They won the game, especially in a short tournament where it's different when we talk about moral victories with an NHL team and you're trying to grow toward like that 82-game schedule, where right now literally the only thing that mattered was winning that hockey game. And yes, there's going to be some takeaways where they're going to watch video and go over it, but they're not going to do that right now. They're going to move on, enjoy this, and at the same time, that's where I feel like confident that this is going to be a great matchup, and I think they're going to come out raring to go on Thursday.
I'm glad you mentioned Carey Price. Carey Price, first of all, it's like an incredibly new school athletic goaltender. We used to think about athletic goaltenders as being, like windmill saves and all these types of things. And really, the great athletic goaltenders, as you well know, are the guys that get to position quickly, efficiently, economically, like those. And Price was the best. He was also very good, by the way, at initiating goalie interference calls. He could get himself in position to get interfered with he was the king of that. But what I always liked about Carey Price is, and I always admired this and thought, man, that's got to be really hard. And you've already sort of talked about this with your buddies after playing at the Bell Center when you were at the Swords. Whenever you watched him interviewed after a game, if you didn't know what happened in the game, based on his interview, you couldn't tell whether the Montreal Canadiens won the game or lost the game. I always admired that about Carey Price. He wore none of it. It was over. It was done. There were no highs. There were no lows. There was just straight line. Another game coming up, one streetcar going, another one coming. Like that was Carey Price. And I always admired that. Like, and how hard that, knowing like how emotionally charged a hockey game is. Like, Carter, how do you do that?
It's funny you say this. It's funny it went this way, Jeff. Like you talk about that and the way he was, because I was the opposite, right? I played in college where it was hard-fought games at Hockey East. I played at UMass Lowell. Yeah, I had a bunch of records there, played very well. Then Connor Hellebuck came around 2 years later, so I got to give him a dig. And in 2 years, he broke every record I had. So it's been a goalie factory at UMass Lowell, but. Yeah. We'd be in these tight games, right? And we'd score a goal, and I would be skating to the corner, fist pumping, so excited. I'd be revving my engine. And then all of a sudden I started to play pro where I played all the time, and I had to learn how to manage a goal against versus, us scoring, and I would just try to stay even keel. And something I stole from Braden Holtby where he would spray the water up in the air, and he'd find a water droplet, and he would just watch it fall. And something that I used for tracking, but also just to calm myself. And then I really learned how to, like, manage a game, right, where you got to play for 60 minutes, but it's 2.5 hours plus the day of and everything that goes into it, where if it was a big game, I would be so intense, where I really learned to manage just the highs and the lows, be myself. If I went to the bench on a TV timeout, make a joke, be myself, and then get back into the draw, where I think Carey Price was just the best at that, managing the moment and everything that he did. And talk about economical, not just in the crease, but how he was mentally. And so it's so impressive to see. And I think where I had a good clip of Jordan Binnington the other night standing in net against USA. When the play was going on, there was a face-off in the defensive zone, and you could just see him breathing. You could see him visually being like, through the TV, you could see him being like, just controlling himself, being in the moment, not letting the momentum and the energy in the building take him away. And I think that's something that's super important for guys that are in this game on Thursday, to draw back upon those moments, right? Now you have that experience in your back pocket to understand how to handle yourself. And Carey Price was the best at it.
Let me go back to Saturday. So George St. Pierre is there. So George St. Pierre introducing Team Canada. Now, I've been at the Bell Center for hockey countless times, regular season, playoff. I have never heard that building as loud as I did, I think it was 2013. It was George St. Pierre against Nick Diaz. And when St. Pierre came out, it was, and I thought like, okay, I've heard the Bell Center. I've been to hockey games after. No, Carter, like nothing like it that I've ever heard in my, like they adore this guy. Like certainly they all adore like Rocket and Beliveau and Lafleur. Like they adore their hockey players. And we know that. But man, do they adore George St. Pierre. So the crowd is already jazzed. The crowd's already worked up. There's our champion. One of the great things about George St. Pierre, one fighter told me, was he's a great disruptor. If you want to strike, you're going down. We're gonna wrestle. If you want to wrestle, he's gonna keep it up on you. Like he'd always disrupt your rhythm, and that made him like a fighter's fighter. Like the psychology of the whole thing. And then the game starts the way that it does, with 3 fights right away. And all I can think about to myself is here, okay, so what is the message here? What's the message from the Kachucks and JT Miller and Brandon Hagel and Sam Bennett, etc.? Talk to me as a player here. You're watching that. What's going through your mind? What are you thinking?
You're revved up. You're fired up. It's hard to control those emotions. And I guess maybe for me, my first real taste of it, obviously I was with the Chicago Blackhawks when we won the Stanley Cup in 2013, but I wasn't on the team, right? I was on the team. I have a cup ring. I got to be part of it, but I didn't play, right? I remember my first time being around the playoffs was in Nashville, and the energy is – I remember backing up my first game. We played the Blackhawks in the first round. I was so exhausted after the game, Jeff, and I didn't even play. I sat on the bench, and I was like, what is this, right? Because I didn't have experience. I didn't know how to control it, right? So this is the same thing. Example is the momentum and the energy in a building is so powerful, right? And I think what's good for Canada and also for the United States is that kind of got out of them in the first game, right? They have that. Now this is going to be controlled energy that is going to be directed at the play, right? I would be very surprised if we see a fight Thursday, unless it's something that, comes to bar, it's a blowout or something like that. We're off the start. It's going to be straight to hockey, in my personal opinion, which the way I think it should be. I think that was legendary the other night. I thought it was awesome. But I think for these teams, there is like the experience, there's that energy, and it's something that is just, it charges within you. I think that's something that's so important. And again, why I think this event has been such a success is because of the energy in the buildings, how fun it's been, the people they've had involved. So I think this is going to be a great final here Thursday.
Yeah, the one of the interesting things about those fights, you look at the rest of the game. Second period, no penalties. Third period, no penalties. It was gorillas firing coconuts for a couple of minutes there, and then everything just, and then they just went about their bit, and they were intense. Everyone was completely committed, but they just went out there and played hockey. But they got rid, it was almost like they just wanted to establish that this was for keeps. Right? We're not just going through the motions here. This one is for keeps. Let's just remind each other that this one's for keeps, and now let's go play. This one, no matter what happens in this tournament, one of the things, maybe the thing that this tournament will always be remembered for. And again, this tournament is a one and done. That trophy is going to the Hockey Hall of Fame Resource Center to collect dust until someone looks at it 20 years later and says, "What was this for? What was this trophy? Do you remember this? What's it was like the Mustard Cup so many years, 1995 or something like that. Remember, they're probably too young to remember that one. But we're going to look and go what the heck was this? But the thing that it's going to be remembered for is that 9 seconds and the psychology of it and what led up to it and everything happening between Canada and the United States that built right into this one moment where in 9 seconds there were 3 throwdowns. That got everybody talking, and everybody tuning in. And here's what I wonder about. I know that the NHL lately, even though this is a very violent sport, and it's not even a contact sport, it's a collision sport. I know that they've always come shy nowadays about marketing how violent this game can be and how dangerous this game can be. But you saw the numbers on Saturday. You saw everybody talking about this. Is there not a lesson in here? I know what we know about concussions. I know what we know about CTE. I understand all of these things. These are all choices that players make to deliberately put themselves in harm's way. Because I think that there's something we can take out of that moment. Do we want to go back to 3.5-hour games? No. But putting an accent on that physicality, that type of physicality, probably isn't the worst idea at all. No. It's all anyone's talking about, Carter. But for whatever reason, the NHL, I guess it. I get it. Lawyers make everything better. I understand it. But is there not a lesson in there about what this game is?
It is, especially to the non-hockey fan too, right? I know you're always going to hit that. And look at just even the social media that it brought, the people that it brought out of the woodwork and the people that were so excited what was going on. You got Tom Brady commenting on it. You have people that are just influencers, right? And that's what our game needs, right? When we actually look at the pay scale of where we're at and if we start comparing salaries of sports, we've fallen behind so far and we're trying to catch up and the game's in a good place, but you also need to sell that too, right? You need to get people in the stands. And I think that was a really good job of that. And there still is that passion, right? And something that sticks out for me, a story as you're chatting. I remember one time I was in Calgary. We had a morning skate. It was optional. So I went to the rink. I wasn't starting. Jake Allen was playing that night. I was with the Blues. And Doug Armstrong pulled a bunch of guys aside, the 5 or 6 players that weren't playing. And we had some injuries, and no one had grabbed the bull by the horns for St. Louis at that point, right? And he had a meeting with us. And he was kind enough to say, Carter, you're just here because you're the goalie, you're just getting shot. This isn't for you, because I was playing well at the time. And he was explaining to guys somebody's got to do something here. Somebody has to take an opportunity here, because you're going to look back on your career, and this is a moment when you got an opportunity to do something and make a difference and get in the lineup and play. But this is it. And the uncommon, the fact of the matter is this isn't going to come around very often, right? So same idea as this Four Nations Cup and this situation that these players are in. And he also said to us, you guys chose to be hockey players, right? You picked this lifestyle. This is what comes with it, right? So I think that is important for people to understand on the outside looking in. these guys know what they're doing. They enjoy this. They embrace it. You don't think there's any guy in the NHL that watched that game and isn't like, I was standing in my living room, Jeff, watching, like pulsing. Like I felt like I was in the screen. I played 12 years of professional hockey and I was pulsing. My wife is like, Carter, sit down. I'm like, I can't sit down. This is like in us, right? It's like in our DNA, right? To battle, to compete, and to feel that. And I'm sitting in my living room having a beer, watching a game as a retired athlete. So I feel like that passion is something that is displayed and something we can show, which separates us from the NBA and load management and all the things that we see in other sports that gets critiqued. You know, there's something good in hockey that we can bring.
So as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking of The Godfather, and the line from The Godfather that everyone always remembers is, "Oh, make him an offer he can't refuse." To me, the great line in The Godfather is exactly what you're talking about. To me, the best line in The Godfather is, "This is the business we chose." I always say it to myself about my job, like, Jeff, you chose this. Hockey players chose. I can't, like, I can complain to a certain point about certain things, but essentially, I chose this. You know, like, I'm losing my hearing from wearing IFBs and headphones my whole life. And you know who's to blame for that? Me. Because I chose this. That's a really great point, Carter. I'm really glad you brought that up, and for to give like the sort of the other side of the argument in the chat. Kate S says, "Fighting for the sake of ratings makes me feel cringy. These guys only play into the 30s. If fights come from passion in the moment, so be it. Otherwise, I don't love it." I'm like the Olivier Reeves fight to me was a potato chip. It was empty calorie. They fought because Reeves hadn't had a fight. Yeah. So, and that's why the reaction was, okay. It was like but that one, everything happening outside of the game, everything happening in the building. It's Montreal. It's a Saturday night. It's the two best international rivals in hockey right now. And I'll be blunt. I'll get your thought on this one as we start to close here. It's the Tkachuks, man. Like, this is another chapter in the Tkachuk story. Like, they're writing one of the most incredible hockey books right now, the Tkachuk family. Let me close on this one. Give me your thoughts on the Tkachuks.
I love them. I made this comment the other day. As the game gets more and more skilled here, we've gone over so much stuff. I love this, Jeff. Obviously, I love being on it. But I see kids all the time now, skill, right? Everything is skill. Everything is McDavid. Everything is attacking the triangle. Everything is that. And when I watch a player like Brady Tkachuk play and Matthew Tkachuk, you're not telling me that that's not the way that the game is going to go, right? I know it's cyclical, right? We go through cycles where things change and go that way. But who in God's name in the NHL doesn't want a Brady Tkachuk or a Matthew Tkachuk on your team?
Everybody
so
does.
I feel like the game will start to we'll trend that way more now. You need players like that, and especially what we have learned over the past, I don't know how many years you want to say it. You have to play a certain way during the regular season to get in the playoffs, right? But then all of a sudden your team has to be built a certain way to get into the playoffs, and those are those guys that know how to walk the line. They know how to do it. They can do it all, and I think they're so valuable. And I think kids nowadays can take a lesson away from. Sometimes it's not about a toe drag. Sometimes it's not about the PEP system and walking through. Sometimes it's about going through a straight line through your guy and going to the hard areas in the net. And I think there's still value there in the game, right? Even though I know we've gotten away from the fighting and physical play and it's all speed and skill, but there is a lot of value to being able to play the game the right way, and those boys sure do it right.
I love hockey players taking shots at PEP. My kids do it though. My kids love it. But then I like talk to Adam Oates. But then I talk to Adam Oates, and Oates always like, "Get the toys off the ice. Get the toys off the ice." Enough of this stuff.
I think it's good. I shouldn't discredit it. I just think there's more to the game. Like, you need to be there's kids I find sometimes, Jeff, I see them, they're trying to deke through the guy and said, take them wide, drive them, put them on your hip, make it hard on them every shift, right? But
let me close on this one because we got to hustle here. Daily Faceoff Live coming up top of the hour. Let me from Boston. Let me close on this one. We're in an era right now where I always I go to junior games and I go, where'd all the bad skaters go? You know, I go to these like prospect games and I go, where did all the bad skaters go? Like, they're all going okay, here's my thing. When everybody can shoot and everybody can skate and everybody can make plays, everybody can pass, everybody can do the Michigan, everybody can do all that stuff. When everybody's there and we're there, if I'm a manager, you know what I'm saying? What else can you give me? Everybody can do that. Everybody can skate. What can you give me? That's where I go like, that's what the Kachucks have. That's what the Kachucks have.
They do. They have that it factor.
They do.
I think for me, like looking Binnington handling a puck is important, right? That's a divider. It's a separator, right? Something that can separate you from somebody else, right, Jeff?
Big time. You're the best. Thanks for spending a lot of time with me today. Listen, it was an interesting game, certainly, and now all eyes on Thursday. We'll get the rematch. Canada facing off against the United States. The great Carter Hutton joining me here on the sheet. Thanks so much, Huts. You be well, pal.
Thanks, my man.
There he is, the great Carter Hutton. And before we take off here, Zach, one thing that I do want to remind our fans and listeners and viewers, etc. One game left. FanDuel, proud to connect fans to the major sports moments that matter to them. And the one game tonight that really, in some ways, Zach, isn't going to matter because the final is set. It's Canada versus the United States. But it was interesting hearing Pierre talk about if you're Mike Sullivan of USA, what do you do tonight against Sweden? And again, like I was mentioning this with Johnny this morning on Morning Cup of Hockey, this is all about keep on getting better every single game. It's a short tournament. We can't afford to get into bad habits and mistakes, and we can't afford to take this one lightly. This still has to be foot on the gas, which is why it may have the feeling of being an empty calorie game, but more so for the United States than for Sweden. They're out. This is one of those, we need to mind our own knitting here because I have an even bigger game coming up against Canada on Thursday. Well, how you doing?
Yeah, it's not the same. I'm good. I've been enjoying the show here today.
Oh, okay. Oh, very good.
No, I was just gonna say it's not the same because it's Sweden, it's international hockey, and it's not like you're looking at some light opponent. But something I talked about a lot, and I'm sure you probably talk to your kids about, right? Too. You go to tournaments, and one game you play the Detroit Little Caesars, and it's the best team in America, and the next team you play some
Ryan Kessler's 2010s.
Right, exactly.
Good luck. I got a 2010.
Yeah, and then the next game you play some team from, name some random city where they're scraping by and they've come to this tournament and you're probably going to beat them 13-0, but you go from one to the other, or you're playing the weak team and playing the good team the next day. I remember all the time it was like, you tailed off in the late third period there, and suddenly it ingrains in your mind that, maybe it's acceptable to play that way and make that pass and try that little extra move. And then you go into the next game and you play the best team or play the high intensity, and all of a sudden you go, oh, whoops, like that's not okay. And then it costs you. It's like you can't let those habits break in. And I think it's going to be interesting to watch this one tonight.
I think it will too. I think it'll be really interesting, of course, to watch on Thursday, where I don't think that Sidney Crosby is going to make that pass in high ice anymore. I think he's probably done trying to make that pass again that led to the Dylan Larkin goal. Real quick, so we got to wrap up here and give way to DFO Live. You have a closing thought on what you saw this afternoon or what you saw on the weekend, the entire tournament. Zach, I will surrender the floor to you here on the sheet. Your thoughts on how everything. And by the way, I hear Saturday was a success at Greta, so that's great.
It was a lot of fun. Got to meet a bunch of people who follow and watch along from the Leafs Nation there. So it was really cool. I've never got to experience that.
Was Nick behaved?
Yes, as well as Nick Alberta could be. He was. Okay. All right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It was a lot of fun. Saturday night was electric. Obviously, we got to surround ourselves with people who were watching the game and be in that environment. But, I was ready to run through a wall. Like, I watched that game. I listened to the Olays before everything tipped off.
Montreal,
and,
man.
The crowd cheering. And, regardless of what you think about them booing the anthem, it built anticipation for the game. And I didn't expect 3 consecutive fights. I don't think anyone did. I wasn't even thinking that there was going to be one to open the game. I thought maybe at some point during the game, but not right away. So that was pretty electric. The one thing I want to throw out there to close this and my final thoughts on this.
Got 1 minute.
Sidney Crosby is so clutch. The play that he made to close out the game here today and say, enough of this, let's get out of here, let's win this one, I'm done. You would have no idea the guy's 37 years old, and 15 years ago was the 2010 golden goal. Honestly, no idea. He's unbelievable. I'm so happy that guy is on, I'm going to say it, my team as we head into Thursday against the United States of America.
Zach Phillips breaking the news that Sidney Crosby is good. Awesome. Listen, congrats on Saturday. Heard it was a major success. All right, we got to hustle. You got another show. This one from Boston, Daily Faceoff Live, coming up here in a couple of moments. Thanks so much for joining, whether you're in the chat, whether you're listening on podcast, watching on YouTube, watching in the archives. Thank you for your attention. It's always appreciated. DFO Live is coming up here on our Daily Faceoff YouTube channel in moments. Eyes on Thursday. Meanwhile, the sheet returns tomorrow at 3 o'clock. And don't forget, tomorrow, 9 a.m., as always, and with fingers crossed that Colby Cohen's healthy enough to do the show, it'll be Morning Cup of Hockey with Johnny Lazarus and Colby Cohen. All right? Got it? Good. Enjoy Daily Face-Off Live in a moment. If you enjoyed that video, and we certainly hope that you do, please hit the subscribe button right there here at Daily Faceoff. I will put this lineup up against any hockey lineup anywhere. It all gets underway at 9 o'clock Eastern with Morning Cup of Hockey. That is Johnny Lazarus. That is Colby Cohen. Then at noon, it's DFO Live. And then 3 o'clock Eastern, The Sheet. Get caught up on everything in hockey.